ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Good morning, this is Arlene and you're listening to our Durian ASEAN, where we bring you news from Southeast Asia. First up, our ASEAN Daily News focusing on politics. The Thailand pivots closer to China with exercises. For 2 weeks, Thai and Chinese planes took part in the inaugural joint Air Force drill and exercise, culminating late last week with a performance by Beijing's acrobatic air team. According to Group Captain Chanon Mungtanya, a Royal Thai Air Force spokesman involved in the drill at Korat, it is an invaluable opportunity to interact with his Chinese counterparts. He said, "Our relationship will go up a level during the exercise." Historically, Thailand has been one of Washington's staunchest military allies in Southeast Asia and could have expected to see the relationship blossom under US President Barack Obama's pivot to Asia. But the May 2014 coup, the second of the last decade, and the junta's subsequent right crackdown has strained those ties. Meanwhile, Thailand is doing a pivot of its own. The junta is obviously much more comfortable with China now because they speak the same language and commit the same practices. Authoritarianism, according to Puntong Pawakapant, a Thai politics expert at Chulalongkorn University. And Beijing swiftly recognized junta chief General Prayut Chan-o-cha and is pushing plans for a multi-billion-dollar Chinese-built rail network through the kingdom. It is also considering whether to spend $1 billion on Chinese submarines. According to Paul Chambers, director of Institute of Southeast Asian Affairs, said that the junta is playing the realist, juggling connections with China, Japan, and the US to obtain the highest dividend for the Thai state. But he believes the recent deportation are something new. It does show that the military is willing to take enormous flake to help Beijing out. For the United States, events in Thailand create a quandary. Obama has made reasserting American influence in the Asia-Pacific region a flagship of his foreign policy. Moving on to Malaysia. Malaysia is sending climate change action plan to the UN. Malaysia has sent its climate change action plan for the UN Climate Change Conference, or short for COP21, in Paris. In a document hosted on the UN website, the plan said Malaysia planned to reduce greenhouse gas emissions intensity by 45% by 2030. This consists of 35% of an unconditional basis, and a further 10% is conditioned upon receipt of climate finance, technology transfer, and capacity building from developed countries. The details were laid out in an intended nationally determined contribution paper, which the UN acknowledged in a November 27 statement. It can be viewed at newsroom.unfccc.int. Some 181 parties, including Malaysia, have sent the INDC, or the Intended Nationally Determined Contribution papers, to the United Nations for the COP21 conference, which will take place between November 30 and December 31. Malaysia is the second last country in ASEAN to send its papers to the United Nations. Brunei has yet to do so. From Malaysia, we go to Japan. Japan is concerned on the global terrorism crisis that is happening, and it is to launch terrorism info gathering unit on December 8. The Japanese government is making final arrangements to establish on December 8 a task force inside the foreign ministry that will play a key role in gathering terrorism-related information in and outside of the country. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe will convey the plan to French President François Hollande,
whom he is expected to meet on the sidelines of the UN Climate Summit in Paris beginning Monday, as a sign Japan's eagerness to work closely with the international community on counter-terrorism in the wake of the deadly attacks in the French capital. The new information gathering unit will receive orders from the Cabinet Secretariat, which means that it will have direct links with the Prime Minister. Around 30 to 40 experts from the Foreign and Defense Ministries, the National Police Agency and others will form the task force, which will engage in collecting information regarding the Middle East, North Africa, Southeast Asia and South Asia. The government has expected the unit to start operating next April, but decided to move up the launch because of the November 13 Paris attacks, heightened security concern also inside Japan, which will host the Group of Seven summit next year. From Japan, we move on to Myanmar. As we all know, Myanmar had its recent general election, and the winner of the election, which is the National League of Democracy, head Aung San Suu Kyi, she actually wants her MPs, or all MPs in this regard, to toe the line and take pay cut. Aung San Suu Kyi has warned newly minted Member of Parliament that she will not tolerate poor discipline or wrongdoing. Party members said on Saturday as Myanmar's democracy champion began preparing to govern amid sky-high expectations. The Nobel Peace Prize winner also told lawmakers that they will be taking a 25% salary cut in a gesture to the largely poor community who elected them, said an MP who attended the meeting. National League of Democracy Party took nearly 80% of contested seats in the November 8 election, promising change after decades of corrosive and corrupt army control of the country. But she cannot be president under the junta written constitution. Instead, the party leader has vowed to rule from above the president via a proxy who will be selected by the NLD-dominated legislature in the next year. Observers said the NLD, a party of opposition for 25 years, will struggle to match the soaring hopes of a long-suffering people who crave remedies to the country's deep economic and social problems. New MPs will also have to learn the nuts and bolts of power and policy making, as well as deliver on the party's promises of change. Despite public euphoria at the sweeping election win, the military retains a majority stake in Myanmar's politics. It has 25% of all parliamentary seats gifted to it by the charter that it wrote, but so far it has taken the election result gracefully, pledging to ensure a smooth transition of power to the NLD.
We will take a short break. When we return, we will focus on the economic side of Southeast Asia.
ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Welcome back, this is Arlene and you're listening to our ASEAN Daily. On our economic side of Southeast Asia, higher debt level at Asian firms raises concern. Asian firms already weighed down by weaker earnings and also facing volatile currency movements and a softening economic outlook, raising concerns that some might not be able to meet debt payments when interest rates start rising. The Monetary Authority of Singapore, or short for MAS, noted in its latest financial stability review that Asian firms took on more debt in the period of low interest rates and strong capital flows into Asia that followed the financial crisis of 2008. Higher corporate leverage is not necessarily undesirable, especially if the debt raised was used for productive investments or capital-intensive restructuring.
However, the higher debt burden increases the risk of debt repayment difficulties when interest rates normalizes on firms' revenue projections are not met. Indeed, mass stress tests of more than 19,000 corporate balance sheets across the region found that they had become weaker and more sensitive to a rise in interest rates and earnings shocks compared to the situation in the period just before the 2008 financial crisis. However, the tests also found that Asian corporate balance sheets are less vulnerable now than during the Asian financial crisis of 1997, and that Asian firms in general have relatively high stress thresholds. It suggested that more could withstand interest rate and earning shocks. Large companies in particular have ample financial buffers that should have cushioned them against the impact of any volatile movement in foreign currencies. Significant corporate distress remains a low probability scenario in most of Asia. Even so, firms have significantly high levels of debt could be vulnerable if interest rates rise or earnings weaken further. It noted, adding that there is a concentration of debt in some commodities and property-related firms. Moving on to another news. On the global financial economy, IMF poised to put Chinese yuan in elite currency basket. The International Monetary Fund is expected to approve inclusion of China's yuan in its SDR basket of elite currencies on Monday, rewarding Beijing's strong pursuit of the global status. The IMF Executive Board is scheduled to meet on Monday to decide on the recommendation by staff experts earlier in November to include the yuan, also known as renminbi, alongside the US dollar, Euro, Japan yuan and British pound in the grouping. While not a freely traded currency, the SDR, or specifically drawn right, is important as an international reserve asset, and because the IMF issues its crisis loans, crucial to struggling economies like Greece, valued in SDRs. China, now the world's second largest economy, asked last year for the yuan to be added to the grouping of world reserve currencies, but until recently it was considered too tightly controlled to qualify. It is extremely rare that the Executive Board, which represents the IMF 188 member nations, opposes the recommendation of its own experts. The IMF Managing Director Christine Lagarde said in mid-November that she supported the experts' finding that the yuan have met the requirements to be freely usable currency, a key hurdle for SDR status. If accepted, the decision would not take effect before September 30, 2016, to allow users more time to prepare. The last time the SDR basket was modified was in 2000, where the euro replaced the German Deutschmark and the French franc. On the other hand, news about Japan. Japan to help Thailand join TPP trade bloc. Deputy Prime Minister Somkid Siriptak said that Thailand is likely to join the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement signed by 12 Pacific Rim countries last month. At a meeting with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, Mr. Somkid said Japan has pledged to support Thailand joining the march toward the much touted new trade bloc. Thailand is very curious about the TPP, which potentially offers vast opportunity. Japanese investors have also expressed concerns to us over Thailand's stance on whether to join the TPP because they feared if they refuse to join the pact, it could adversely affect the economy or the investment in Thailand. Mr. Somkid said the existing working committee studying the TPP pact needs to be restructured to include representatives from other countries or other industries such as labor, agriculture, public health and foreign affairs. Committee members now mainly come from the Commerce, Ministry chaired by the Deputy Commerce Minister Suvid Minsinsi. During talks with Mr. Abe, Thailand also called for Japanese investment in 10 targeted industries, being promoted as clusters, real development and small and medium enterprise enhancements. In a keynote speech on Thailand's new economic policies at a seminar titled Thailand Moving Forward to Sustainable Growth, he said that even though the world's economy remains sluggish, the Thai exports are feeling the effects. The overall outlook of the Thai economy is strong. About 1,000 Japanese investors attended the seminar. Thailand's foreign reserves are estimated at 157 billion US dollar, compared with a short-term foreign debt of 55 billion US dollar, a public debt to GDP ratio of only 43%, low inflation and unemployment at only 0.9%. Despite this year's decline in growth, there's expected consumer and industrial confidence will rise as a result of the stimulus packages implemented by the government in the past 3 months.
We will take a short break. When we return, we'll discuss the social and culture side of Southeast Asia.
ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Welcome back, this is Arlene and you're listening to our ASEAN Daily. On our social-cultural side of Southeast Asia, we move on to the news about vape. Johor Monarch wants all vape outlet in Johor to close shop by January the 1st.
According to this news by The Star, the Sultan of Johor has ordered a ban on vaping in the state, and His Royal Highness has given the owners of vape outlets a month deadline to close down, and he does not want to hear any excuses. This is a question of health and its effects on young people. He has nothing to do with businesses, and for sure has nothing to do with race. He is greatly disappointed by some people bringing up racial threats and political threats. Sultan Ibrahim Ibn Almarhum Sultan Iskandar said the state has the right to invoke bylaws under the local government laws to shut down vape outlets. The Sultan ordered the State Executive Council to meet next week to hasten the process. Earlier the month, Rural and Regional Development Minister Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri Yaakob said the Health Ministry's enforcement against the sales of vapes containing nicotine would kill the Malay-dominated industry. The minister made the comment after several Bumiputra groups lodged a police report warning that the crackdown on vape could cost Barisan Nasional more than 1 million votes in the next general election. The Johor ruler said there would be a long-term health effects on vaping, and the medical costs borne by taxpayers would be staggering. He said the ban in Johor State would cover all sales of vape products. It is also very clear under the laws that these vape outlets cannot sell nicotine, so why are they expected to close an eye to such disregards of the law? Health experts have said that there has not been any scientific evidence to prove that e-cigarettes would help smokers with addiction. They said it would not help smokers to quit but start a new form of addiction. On another news, English skill is arguably unavoidable for Indonesia. The demand for Indonesian workers to have better English skills will be even stronger after the ASEAN Economic Community comes into effect on 31st December 2015. There's no need to worry that more and more young Indonesians speak foreign languages fluently and less often use Bahasa Indonesia and other local languages. A prominent sociologist argued using foreign languages like English is unavoidable nowadays. Imam B. Prasojo from Universitas Indonesia said recently, the contextual condition of people's day-to-day life is forcing them to use foreign languages. Just look at Indonesians' day-to-day life. A computer set has a mouse, which means tikus in Bahasa Indonesia, And if we say tikus, it is certainly strange. Therefore, we have no choice other than using the foreign words. He also further noted that using foreign languages on wearing jeans and other non-local attires have nothing to do with one's sense of patriotism. Genuine nationalism spirit, in his view, is one's commitment to do something to help disadvantaged countrymen. Imam Prasojo shared that people who wear jeans may have stronger nationalism spirit than those who wear kebaya, a traditional style of long dress. Accordingly, one way of popularizing Bahasa Indonesia to the world is to produce new inventions in science and technology. This way, other nations will be led to use the Bahasa language, say the sociologists. He mentioned Indonesia's culinary inventions like karet dok, gado-gado and kopi luwak. Meanwhile, the demand for Indonesian workers to have better English skills will be even stronger after the AEC comes into effect on 31st December 2015. We end with the news in Singapore. Singaporeans protest plan performance by Adam Lambert. The scheduled performance by American pop star Adam Lambert during Singapore's New Year countdown show has sparked a culture clash in the form of an online petition. Report by Bangkok Post said that nearly 20,000 people signed a petition urging the local broadcaster MediaCorp to remove Lambert from its Countdown 2016 lineup of performers. The petition is supported by Focus on the Family Singapore, a local chapter of the US-based conservative Christian organization. It cites Lambert's unpredictability and his record of performing sexualized acts on stage. Lambert sparked controversy at the 2009 American Music Awards when he kissed his male keyboardist during his performance. A simple online search would reveal that he is well known for his active promotion of a highly sexualized lifestyle and LGBT rights, both of which are contrary to mainstream Singaporean values. A second petition drive urging MediaCorp to keep Lambert on the bill and demonstrate that Singapore is a country that shuts discrimination and promotes diverse, inclusive points of view. It has garnered about 20,000 signatures as well. Local performers also urge the promoters to stand firm. The world is waking up to the idea that LGBT rights are inalienable human rights. Please don't embarrass us by cancelling Adam's performance. Please let the music play. This is what being wrote by actor and theatre director Ivan Hang. Adam Lambert also defended his art in a statement released by Warner Music Singapore. He said, "My performance at Celebration 2016 will not only be a spectacular one, it will celebrate the entire human family in all its diversity." That's all from our news today. Thanks for listening to Durian ASEAN. You can always catch us on our social media at Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. And also, you can listen to our podcast on our YouTube channel. You can also listen to us live at durianasian.com or on the go by downloading Durian ASEAN on your mobile. Thank you for listening.